You think igloos are just cool-looking snow houses, but they're actually one of the most sophisticated survival technologies ever developed by humans. When temperatures plunge to -50 degrees Fahrenheit and howling winds threaten to freeze you solid in minutes, an igloo can maintain indoor temperatures around 60 degrees Fahrenheit using nothing but compressed snow and ancient engineering principles. Here's what sounds completely impossible. Eskimos could build a complete igloo in just 2 hours using only a snow knife and their bare hands. These weren't temporary shelters. They were precision-engineered survival systems that could house entire families for months while providing warmth, comfort, and protection from the world's most brutal environment. But the real genius wasn't just in building igloos. It was in the 7 advanced techniques Eskimos developed that turned frozen water into nearly impregnable fortresses. These methods were so effective that modern Arctic researchers still use igloo building principles in their emergency survival protocols. I've studied Inuit oral histories, archaeological evidence from across the Arctic, and accounts from early explorers who witnessed master igloo builders in action. What I discovered about igloo construction will completely change how you think about survival architecture and human adaptation to extreme environments. The challenge Eskimos faced was absolutely deadly. Arctic winters bring temperatures that can kill an unprotected human in under 10 minutes. Winds reach 100+ miles per hour, creating whiteout conditions that make navigation impossible. Snow and ice stretch endlessly in every direction, offering no natural shelter or building materials except frozen water itself. Traditional building materials, wood, stone, metal, simply didn't exist in most Arctic regions. Eskimos had to create warm, stable shelter using only snow, ice, and their accumulated knowledge of Arctic survival. One mistake in construction could mean death for an entire family. In this video, I'm going to reveal the 7 techniques Eskimos used to build igloos that could withstand Arctic storms while maintaining life-saving warmth. From snow selection methods that determined structural integrity to heating systems that worked without any fuel, these innovations represent some of humanity's most impressive survival engineering. Method 1. The snow selection mastery. The first and most crucial technique Eskimos mastered was identifying and selecting the perfect snow for igloo construction. This wasn't just grabbing any available snow. It was a sophisticated understanding of snow science that determined whether an igloo would stand strong or collapse catastrophically. Here's how their system worked. Eskimos could identify over a dozen different types of snow, each with specific properties that made it suitable or unsuitable for construction. The ideal snow was called puktak, wind-packed snow that had been compressed by Arctic storms into a dense, cohesive building material stronger than many modern construction materials. But the real innovation was in their testing methods. Eskimos developed the stick test, a technique where they'd probe snow with a traditional hunting stick, feeling for the exact resistance that indicated perfect building snow. Too soft and the igloo would collapse. Too hard and the blocks would be impossible to cut and shape. The snow quality assessment was incredibly sophisticated. Eskimos could determine snow density, age, and structural integrity just by walking on it and listening to the sounds it made. Fresh powder snow made a squeaking sound and was useless for construction. Properly aged wind-packed snow made a solid crunching sound that indicated ideal building conditions. Depth requirements were specific and non-negotiable. Building snow needed to be at least 2 feet deep with consistent density throughout. Eskimos would dig test holes to verify snow depth and quality before committing to a building site. The expertise was passed down through generations of master builders. Young Eskimos learned snow selection through years of training and practice, developing the ability to identify perfect building snow under any conditions. This knowledge was considered as valuable as hunting skills for Arctic survival. But finding perfect snow was only the beginning. Once Eskimos located ideal building materials, they needed specialized tools and techniques to transform frozen water into precisely cut building blocks. Method 2. The precision cutting techniques. Eskimos developed incredibly sophisticated cutting techniques that could transform wind-packed snow into perfectly shaped building blocks using nothing but traditional snow knives and centuries of accumulated skill. These weren't random cuts. They were precision engineering operations that created interlocking blocks with exact dimensions and angles. The snow knife, called a pana, was the primary tool for igloo construction. These weren't ordinary knives. They were specially designed cutting implements with long, wide blades specifically shaped for cutting through dense snow. But here's where Eskimo innovation really showed. They developed different cutting techniques for different parts of the igloo. Foundation blocks required different cuts than wall blocks, which were different from the crucial keystone block that held the entire structure together. Each cutting technique was optimized for its specific structural purpose. The block sizing was mathematically precise. Eskimos cut blocks in specific proportions that created optimal structural integrity when assembled. Foundation blocks were typically 2 feet long, 1 foot high, and 8 inches thick. Wall blocks gradually decreased in size as the igloo rose, creating the perfect dome shape through precise geometric progression. Cutting angles were calculated for structural stability. Each block was cut with specific angles that allowed it to lean inward slightly, creating the self-supporting dome structure that made igloos incredibly strong. These angles were so precise that modern engineers have struggled to replicate them without advanced measuring tools. The cutting speed was remarkable for hand tools. Experienced Eskimo builders could cut a properly sized and shaped igloo block in under 2 minutes. A complete igloo required 50 to 60 blocks, meaning the cutting phase could be completed in less than 2 hours by a skilled builder. But perfectly cut blocks were useless without proper foundation techniques. Eskimos needed methods for creating stable bases that could support the entire igloo structure on shifting, uneven Arctic terrain. Method 3. The foundation engineering system. Eskimos developed sophisticated foundation techniques that created stable, level bases for their igloos even on uneven Arctic terrain. This wasn't just clearing snow and starting to build. It was precision engineering that ensured structural integrity and proper drainage while providing optimal insulation from ground cold. The site preparation was systematic and scientific. Eskimos would clear the building area down to hard-packed snow or ground level, creating a stable foundation that wouldn't shift or settle during construction. They understood that proper site preparation was crucial for long-term structural stability. But the real innovation was in their circular layout system. Eskimos used a simple but effective technique for marking perfect circles. One person would stand at the center holding a rope, while another walked around marking the circle's edge. This created perfectly round foundations that were essential for proper dome construction. The foundation blocks were specially selected and prepared. These blocks had to be larger and more stable than wall blocks because they carried the weight of the entire structure. Eskimos would choose the densest, most structurally sound blocks for foundation use, often testing each block individually. The drainage system was integrated into foundation design. Eskimos would create slight slopes and drainage channels that directed meltwater away from the igloo interior. This prevented flooding and maintained dry living conditions even during temperature fluctuations. Insulation principles were built into the foundation from the beginning. Eskimos would create air gaps and insulation layers in their foundations that prevented ground cold from penetrating into the igloo interior. This foundation insulation was crucial for maintaining comfortable interior temperatures. But even the most perfect foundation was useless without proper wall construction techniques. Eskimos needed methods for building walls that would curve inward to create the self-supporting dome structure that made igloos incredibly strong. Method 4. The spiral wall construction. Eskimos developed ingenious spiral wall construction techniques that created self-supporting dome structures without any internal framework or support systems. This wasn't just stacking blocks in circles. It was sophisticated architectural engineering that used geometric principles to create incredibly strong structures from nothing but snow blocks. The spiral pattern was the key to igloo strength and stability. Instead of building in horizontal layers, Eskimos constructed their walls in a continuous spiral that rose gradually from foundation to dome top. This spiral pattern distributed structural loads evenly and created a self-reinforcing system that became stronger as construction progressed. But here's where Eskimo innovation really showed. They understood that each block had to lean inward at precisely the right angle to maintain the spiral pattern while creating the dome shape. These angles were calculated through generations of experience and were so precise that modern architects have studied igloo construction to understand the geometric principles involved. The block fitting was incredibly precise. Each block had to fit perfectly with its neighbors while maintaining the proper inward lean and spiral progression. Eskimos would trim and adjust blocks during construction, creating joints so tight that no mortar or filler was needed to maintain structural integrity. The construction sequence was systematic and efficient. Eskimos would complete one full spiral revolution before beginning the next level, ensuring that each level was structurally complete before adding additional weight. This sequence prevented structural failures during construction. The structural engineering was remarkably sophisticated. As the walls rose and curved inward, each block supported the blocks above it while being supported by the blocks below. This created a self-reinforcing structure that became stronger and more stable as construction progressed. The speed was impressive for hand construction. Experienced Eskimo builders could complete the wall construction phase of an igloo in under an hour, working with remarkable efficiency and precision. This speed was crucial for survival in extreme weather conditions. The strength was remarkable for a snow structure. Properly constructed igloo walls could support the weight of a full-grown person standing on top of the completed dome. The spiral construction technique created structures that were incredibly strong despite being built from frozen water. But wall construction was only part of creating a complete igloo. The most critical and challenging part was installing the Keystone block that would lock the entire dome structure together and complete the shelter. Method 5. The Keystone Installation Mastery. The Keystone installation was the most critical and technically challenging part of igloo construction. This single block had to fit perfectly into the remaining opening at the top of the dome while locking the entire structure together. One mistake during Keystone installation could cause the entire igloo to collapse. The Keystone block was specially prepared and shaped for its crucial role. Unlike other blocks that were rectangular, the Keystone was cut into a complex three-dimensional shape that would fit precisely into the irregular opening at the dome's peak. This required incredible skill and spatial visualization abilities. The installation process was incredibly precise and dangerous. The Keystone had to be lowered through the opening from outside the igloo, then maneuvered into position from inside. This required coordination between builders inside and outside the structure, working in extreme cold with limited visibility. The structural engineering was remarkable. Once properly installed, the Keystone distributed the dome's structural loads evenly throughout the spiral wall system. The Keystone transformed the igloo from a collection of individual blocks into a unified, incredibly strong structure. The completion ritual was significant in Eskimo culture. Installing the Keystone marked the transformation of a construction project into a livable shelter. Many Eskimo groups had traditional ceremonies or practices associated with Keystone installation, but completing the dome structure was only the beginning of creating a livable igloo. Eskimos needed sophisticated interior design and heating systems that would transform a snow shelter into a warm, comfortable home. Method 6. The interior heating and ventilation system. Eskimos developed ingenious interior heating and ventilation systems that could maintain comfortable living temperatures inside igloos without any external fuel sources. These weren't just simple heating methods. They were sophisticated thermal management systems that used body heat, oil lamps, and clever air circulation to create warm, livable spaces. The heating system was based on the oil lamp called a quillic, a shallow stone or ceramic dish that burned seal oil or whale oil to provide both heat and light. But the real innovation was in how Eskimos positioned and managed these lamps to maximize heating efficiency while preventing carbon monoxide poisoning. But here's where Eskimo thermal engineering really showed. They understood that igloos worked as thermal systems where warm air rose and circulated in specific patterns. They designed their interior layouts to take advantage of these air circulation patterns, creating warm zones for sleeping and cooler zones for storage and activities. The ventilation system was crucial for safety and comfort. Eskimos would create small ventilation holes near the top of the dome that allowed fresh air to enter while letting stale air and combustion gases escape. These holes were precisely sized to maintain air quality without losing too much heat. The interior platform system was sophisticated and effective. Eskimos would build raised sleeping platforms using snow blocks covered with animal skins. These platforms positioned sleepers in the warmest part of the igloo where heated air naturally accumulated. Temperature management was achieved through careful control of heating sources and ventilation. Eskimos could maintain interior temperatures of 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit even when outside temperatures were -40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. This temperature control was achieved through precise management of oil lamp flames and ventilation openings. The air circulation patterns were understood and utilized. Eskimos knew that cold air would sink to the floor level while warm air rose to the sleeping platform level. They designed their interior layouts to take advantage of these natural air circulation patterns. Humidity control was important for comfort and structural integrity. Too much humidity could cause ice formation on interior walls, while too little could make the air uncomfortably dry. Eskimos managed humidity through ventilation control and by understanding how different activities affected interior moisture levels. Safety systems were built into the heating design. Eskimos positioned their oil lamps and ventilation systems to prevent carbon monoxide buildup and fire hazards. They understood the dangers of indoor combustion and developed safety practices that prevented accidents. The thermal efficiency was remarkable. Properly designed igloo heating systems could maintain comfortable living temperatures using minimal fuel. The igloo's insulation properties combined with efficient heating systems created incredibly energy-efficient living spaces. But heating systems were only part of creating a complete living space. Eskimos needed comprehensive interior design techniques that would transform the inside of an igloo into a functional, comfortable home for extended winter occupation. Method 7. The complete interior design system. Eskimos developed comprehensive interior design systems that transformed the inside of igloos into functional, comfortable living spaces that could house entire families for months during Arctic winters. This wasn't just arranging furniture, it was sophisticated space planning that maximized comfort, efficiency, and survival in extremely limited space. The floor plan was carefully designed for optimal use of space and thermal efficiency. Eskimos would create different zones within the igloo for sleeping, cooking, storage, and activities. Each zone was positioned to take advantage of the igloo's thermal properties while providing maximum functionality. But the real innovation was in their multi-level interior design. Eskimos created raised platforms at different heights that served different functions. The highest platform was for sleeping where the warmest air accumulated. Lower platforms were used for sitting and activities. The floor level was used for storage and as a cold trap for incoming air. The insulation systems were sophisticated and effective. Eskimos would line interior walls with animal skins that provided additional insulation while creating more comfortable surfaces. These skin linings also helped manage humidity and prevented ice formation on interior walls. The lighting system was integrated with heating. Oil lamps provided both heat and light. But Eskimos also used reflective surfaces made from polished metal or ice to amplify and direct light throughout the interior space. This created surprisingly bright, well-lit living areas. Furniture was minimal, but highly functional. Eskimos used snow blocks covered with animal skins to create seating and sleeping surfaces. These furniture pieces were built directly into the igloo structure, maximizing space efficiency while providing necessary comfort. The privacy systems were important for family life. Eskimos would create privacy screens using animal skins or snow block partitions that divided the interior space into private areas for different family members or activities. The story of how Eskimos built igloos to survive Arctic winters reveals something profound about human ingenuity and adaptation to extreme environments. When faced with conditions that would kill most people within minutes, Eskimos didn't just endure. They created architectural solutions that turned the Arctic's most abundant material into sophisticated shelter systems. The next time you see snow falling or complain about cold weather, remember the Eskimos who developed building techniques so advanced that modern engineers still study their methods. They proved that with enough knowledge, skill, and ingenuity, humans can create comfortable homes even in Earth's most hostile environments.